Good Monday morning, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith on a gorgeous Monday morning here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Thank you kindly for joining us. We're presented by Keller Williams Alliance. Quinton, we say it loud and we say it proud. Keller Williams Alliance. So much we're going to cover on today's program. Keith, which you will notice in about 5 seconds as Judah Wickower, our director, goes to the studio camera, is not here. He's spending a little R&R with the beautiful 7/8 Quinton Yonna Smith.
I just think the attorney says the bail will get posted soon. You might see him later this week.
Wait, Yonna's now 7/8? Man, Keith better be careful. Last time I think he was 3/4. He's losing his market share there.
That tenor voice right there is Lee Elberson, our brother from another mother, the CEO of Clayborne Education, one of the owners of 8 Hats, with his very intelligent brother-in-law, Jared, who is in the Raging Cajun right now.
Yes, he is. Cajun country.
Cajun country. Gentlemen, when you guys are on the show, I sit back. So I truly enjoy when you're on the show because you guys both have the gift of gab. You guys spend a lot of quality time together because you're homies, often over a poker table, or maybe with some bourbon in front of you. So I get to sit back and relax and follow your lead today.
It doesn't have to be either or. It can be both.
It's usually both.
It can be both.
It's usually both. So I will follow your lead, Quinton and Lee, because I have a feeling you guys have done some brainstorming prior to arrival.
Actually, no.
Wow.
We had one little text talked about economy, what's happening locally, and then just kind of wing it and go with it because, news changes every day. So
certainly in housing it does, Quinton Beckham.
It does. Although, interesting, everybody likes to talk about housing, but housing's not the big deal right now.
Oh, what's the big deal? We're going to go inflation?
It's infecting housing, but everybody's thinking of 2009 when all the problems, housing was the center of it. And now housing's not. It's everything else.
That's absolutely true. Tremendous equity in people's homes, more restrictive lending environments, less speculation with housing makes a more stable housing ecosystem. Lee Elberson's a numbers guy. I know you have a take, either supply chain, labor, inflation. How do you get this under control? The impacts it's having on mom and pops and Main Street. Where do you want to go, my friend?
Whew, wow, that's a lot. I always like to start high levels. Okay. So I think Quinton's right. When you look at what's happening with the economy, no one wants to say the R word, right? Are we in a recession? Technically, I guess yes, because we've seen 2 consecutive quarters of GDP decrease. But I think it's important to recognize that the economy is a very chaotic system. Unlike the weather, though, which is also a chaotic system, it's a level 2 chaotic system, which means that predictions will change the system. If we predict that it's going to rain tomorrow, it's not going to change that it's going to rain tomorrow. But if we predict that there's a recession, consumers will change their spending habits, investors change, and then maybe we don't enter a recession. So I think it's interesting to know that consumers have some power over what the future is. That always helps me, I think.
I mean, the consumer determining the future with their disposable dollars. Quinton Beckham, where do you want to go with that?
I think consumers have a ton of power. And interestingly, we have a lot of definitions for a recession floating around, but it's the National Bureau of Economic Research that is the body that the government uses to decide. They've decided that we're in a recession, and that's when we say we're in a recession. And so it's not, yes, it is 2 quarters, but it's really 5 months. And so how they decide, there's a really interesting study on how do they decide this. And it's 6 or 7 people in a room with no tape recorders talking about what's going on, and they vote.
There you go.
And they decide whether or not we're in a recession.
And interestingly, Wikipedia froze edits to the recession page on Friday.
Well, and we talked about this last week. Interesting commentary coming out of Biden's administration about the definition of a recession and how that term has become much more malleable. I'll leave it at that, if you may, than it has in the past. So if we localize it to Charlottesville, how have you seen it impacting this community, gentlemen? And Yonna Smith watching the program. Welcome, Yonna.
The better 7/8. Good to have
her. That's
right. So my wife and I went out and did some partying around town on Friday. Went to Bang, went to Vitae, went to Botanical, and I asked everybody there because it seemed kind of dead. And a couple of
all 3?
At all 3, yeah.
On a Friday night.
Yep. So one of the servers at Bang was like, yeah, this summer's been really weird. It's been very difficult to predict when people are going out as opposed to earlier in the year. And I would speculate that earlier in the year, as we were feeling more comfortable with COVID, everybody was just going out. And now it's even saying the word recession or seeing inflation is causing consumers to sort of clam up. And so that would be my prediction, that you're already starting to see it in the natural places, which is where people spend extra money, which is going out to eat, and I'm guessing probably some of the retail stores.
Quinton?
And I think it's really possible, we just talked about how much power consumers have, and they really do. 67% of the American economy is powered by consumption. And I believe there's such a thing as personal recession, personal inflation.
What's that mean?
So how do you decide, how do most people decide in their personal lives that there's a recession?
They don't have enough money.
Have
to
enough
pay
money
their
for
bills.
what?
Yeah.
Okay, so deciding you're in a recession, one, depends on how much money you have and
It's relative.
What
With
percentage
respect,
of your bills are or your money is soaked up by certain bills. So there was two papers actually that came out last year, one in March, one in August. I'm sorry, it was 2 years ago, it was 2020. And it is from the National Bureau of Economic Research that said the best predictors of inflation, which could lead to recession, are households with women who do shopping.
Ooh, there you go. I like that.
They say that those of us around this table, we are lousy predictors of inflation and recessions because we tend to not, you either have somebody else in the household, the majority of the time, it's not 100% mind you, somebody else in the household regularly shops for the items that are most sensitive predictors for inflation. So
I have this. This hits close to home. This is beautiful perspective. My wife and I, the number one point of contention, and she's phenomenal, she's the rock of our family, is the weekly grocery budget. And she said and this is exactly Quinton's point, she's watching now, she's walking with a mom's group listening to us in the neighborhood, and she said in the last 90 days that we tried to do it under $200 a week, it's impossible. She said, I cannot do it for under $200 a week. And that's kind of the only point of a contention.
And it's buying the same things, right?
Buying the same things.
It's buying
That's
the same
your point.
things. And so, when you think of all the things that feed into what creates inflation and makes a recession, so if you can't do it for $200 a month, you either have to...
$200 a week?
I'm sorry, a week. You have to take a percentage of your income that goes for something else. Maybe his night out on the town, tipping bartenders.
Vacations, anything.
Stumbling along the sidewalk. And so either that goes down to, only 3 instead of his normal 5 days a week, or you cut back on driving, or you buy different things, so your things move in terms of what you buy. So perhaps your wife is now considering these certain brand name products that she usually buys, looking at the more generic products
brand.
Or a brand shift in order to maintain that $200 a week, because we know how you are with money, so I'm assuming she's not getting any more.
That's a zinger right there. That's a zinger. I like it.
And I think the point of the two papers was that these behaviors then reinforce the perception, as they should do. Because if you don't have enough money to shift, I think most of us around the table are fortunate in that we have a little more wiggle room than the average Charlottesvillian. But let's suppose you don't have money to shift. You either buy less, or you switch jobs, or you ask for a raise, or you do things that create that wage inflation spiral, which continues the process towards a recession.
That's a perfect take to unpack here. And why we may not be the barometer of a recession could be the answer to this question right here. This is spontaneity at its finest. Gentlemen, what is the price of a gallon of milk currently?
I can only tell you a gallon of almond milk is $5.19. Okay, so I don't do dairy.
Lee
but
Elberson
that's
knows.
increased.
Okay,
yeah.
You got it right then.
Yeah.
Almond milk. How about skim?
I don't drink milk.
Okay, Judah, do you know the price of a gallon of milk?
I would say it's $1 more than it was 6 months ago.
It is $3 at $3.69 at most grocery stores.
Sounds about right.
A gallon of milk.
How much was it 6 months ago? I bet you it's
It was
probably
less.
$1. Yeah.
It was less. It was below $3.
Yeah.
Now, you can make the point, and we have comments coming in from Neil. The fabulous Nikki Chambliss is watching the program over here. Some friends in Short Pump on the program. McLean and Crozet, I see on our heat map. You can make the argument some commodities are obviously dropping in price. Gasoline we've seen, fuel we've seen drop. I mean, it's gone from $4.99 to $3.69. So it's, and now I know you're an electric vehicle, so you're different here. But $1.30 per gallon savings is a substantial savings. And you also have unemployment in very decent levels. It's not out of control. And you have strong earnings being shown by a lot of these companies on Wall Street over the last month or so. So these arguments are being utilized against this recessionary environment. Do you guys want to touch on that at all?
I also read I read a paper months ago that talked about part of what's sort of carrying us forward economically with momentum was the sheer amount of money that we had saved during the pandemic. And so what you had was you had really inflated savings accounts compared to how they were pre-pandemic. And so you have people burning through those right now. If you look back through our history dating back to the 60s, every time wages have changed, the middle class has done something to prop up their standard of living. And so whether it was women going back to work, which it was not because all these great jobs were available, although there were some. It was because that's what they had to do to support the household standard of living, whether it was HELOCs and credit card debt and all of the things that we've seen happen over the last 40 or 50 years. We do what we need to do to prop up our standard of living until such a time as we cannot.
So you're saying it could be fool's gold, smoke and mirrors right now.
I think what you're seeing is an after effect of all the things that made these housing prices possible in terms of affordability and all of the things that sort of got us here. We had too much money swimming around the country over the last 2 years without any good discretionary places to spend it. And so we emptied out warehouses and we cranked the manufacturing economy until such a time as we couldn't. And now you're entering that slide where that money that might have bought, I don't know, a Peloton before they started trimming back their stuff, or a new car before you can get one of those, is now sitting there and going towards things like grocery bills and electric bills and paying for extra gas in the tank. And so I do think we have a skate period until you start seeing a larger percentage of Americans that have eaten that up.
What do you think, Lee Elberson?
So much to unpack there. Yeah, I think on Quinton's first point, I think you're right. It's the federal government basically takes responsibility from combating inflation, right? Particularly the Federal Reserve. But it is highly dependent on consumers. And I think we are seeing right now a difference between the change in consumer spending and the change in consumer confidence. Consumer confidence in the economy is at an all-time low. Well, all-time, not in the last several years. I think it's down to like 50%. So I think maybe that's a forecast for how people are feeling. They're not necessarily changing their spending habits based on what Quinton said already, which is that, hey, I still have some money. I'm not feeling it necessary to completely cut out my expenses, but instead of going out on Friday, we're going to go buy a board game and stay in, and maybe we'll order pizza instead of spending money at a local restaurant. So I think it's definitely changing consumer spending habits, and in my experience, we're already seeing that locally. I don't know what that means moving into like December. I guess, we've talked about the people at this table being good predictors of how the economy is. I mean, I think Paul Krugman, his Nobel Prize-winning economist, said it best that like predicting the economy is black magic. Nobody can do it well. The people who can do it best do it poorly. But
same for stock pickers. Same for stock pickers.
I think gamblers,
and that's what that is.
Yeah. So I think a lot of this is just speculation that we're in a recession. We have to cut back, but. Again, I think Paul Krugman was on a couple of newscasts last Friday and saying it doesn't really matter that like we're in a recession. It really just depends on what the consumer's perception of that is. Despite the fact that predictors like I think Michael Burry's adamant that we are entering in a serious recession and we will feel it by Christmas. I think he tweeted about it on Thursday.
And he's got a very good track record.
I mean, he predicted what was happening in 2008.
That's the mortgage-backed securities guy.
Yeah, that's him.
He predicted this. Is it The Big Short? Mm-hmm. The movie?
The Big Short.
The Big Short. I mean, if you have not seen The Big Short, watch the movie. It is absolutely freaking phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I want to throw some housing data to you, QB. Help me decipher this. Make some sense of this here. This is from CNBC. And home prices have cooled at a record pace in June. This is according to a housing data firm. Let's see, I'll read the nut graph to you. Black Knight, home prices are still higher than they were a year ago, but the gains slowed at the fastest pace on record in June, according to Black Knight, a mortgage software data and analytics firm that began tracking this metric in the 70s. The annual rate of price appreciation fell 2 points from 19.3 to 17.3. That's lead of CNBC right now, and it was all over the news there. Help me make some sense of this. Are we going to a market that's historical in appreciation yearly, a few points, as opposed to the anomaly that was COVID, that was 20 to 40 points over a 2-year period? Is that what's happening here?
Well, I mean, when you think of how quickly we went from 3% appreciation to 10, 12, 15, 17, 22, we're going to cruise down back towards the 3% mark, and we have to get different mechanics here for us left-handers. I'm going to keep on
that's
that.
a tough one.
Yeah, that's a hard one. Trying to not knock the
We
mic
would have
around.
to change spots.
I didn't know that.
We would
I'm
have
a
to change
lefty.
spots to fix that.
Yeah. So yeah, you're definitely seeing them cool off, and yes, it has had the largest percentage drop. But if forget about what investment we're talking about, if I told you could make a 17% improvement or gain on an investment in a year,
jump on it.
You jump on it.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is, I'm really seriously outpacing every other value growth asset around.
Oh, no doubt.
But only by 17% instead of 19%.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happened.
So, there's sellers that are wondering, like, oh my gosh, have I missed the market? No. You didn't win the $1.3 billion lottery ticket. You only won the $900 million lottery ticket. So, yes, there's lots of stuff still to be said for that. We are in this pause while buyers shift and sort of reconfigure rates. But also, if you've watched, inventory is increasing. You're seeing mortgage rates have actually started to come down.
Yeah.
And although the Fed rate hikes will create a floor limit, those mortgage rates are still based on demand. And so I think it's not as bad as people think when you're talking about just real estate.
Yeah, he's 100% right. I mean, in June, they crossed over 6 points, 30-year fix with good credit. They now, according to Mortgage News Daily, have dropped back to the lower 5% range. That's with good credit on a 30 fixed. Let's get Elberson in the mix. I mean, you in the last 6 months purchased.
Yep.
In the city.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
In the city, you purchased. You can walk us through the experience if you want to. If this is too personal, we don't have to go down this road. But I mean, you're a microcosm here.
Yeah. Well, I'll go into that in a second. But I remember having a conversation with Quinton in January and February, and you telling me this type of growth is not sustainable. And I think it's a good thing. If the housing market didn't cool down after the Fed changed interest rates, we have a really big problem. That means we don't have any levers then to adjust. That means it's spinning out of control, right? We expected it to cool down some, and it's good that it did. Right, Quinton?
It needed to.
Yeah.
It needed to. This was completely unsustainable.
Yeah.
And let me jump in here, and then I'll get back to you guys. The Fed historically, when it raises rates, it cools housing and it cools all the micro ecosystems associated with housing, remodeling, commodities, appliances. Keith and I were texting about this last week. You will very soon see the supply of appliances like refrigerators and dishwashers, the stuff that's in short supply now, start stockpiling in inventory, and then that's when you start seeing inflation really cooling. When Walmart, in its last earnings report, that I pass it back to you, says, good Lord, we have too much inventory, you're starting to potentially see some cooling over here. Elberson, I know the wheels are turning over there, and they're spinning quickly, my friend.
Yes. So I can tell you from my wife and I's experience, we were trying to buy for basically about a year.
Okay.
And for a first-time home buyer or somebody who's not buying it as an investment property, it was almost untenable. It's just, it got to the point where I thought, we're just not going to be able to buy. You have to make the decision so fast. And so I think if the housing market continues to cool down, that's a good thing for people who need homes, not people who want to make money on maybe a second home, because then it'll make sure that the prices are equilibrated enough that first-time home buyers, and maybe even helping affordable housing. So I think it continuing to cool off is a good thing for the everyday person.
I agree.
If you're looking to just flip and make a lot of money, you want that quick return on investment. But I remember us having a similar conversation in February.
And Courtney Stewart and I were just talking about this last week on WINA, because I know everybody's like, oh my gosh,
Charlottesville
mortgage
right
rates.
now?
That is correct.
Yeah.
There was a lot of conversation amongst clients of ours about how horrible this sounded to them, and we would much rather have the low rates and the accelerating prices. And really, that's not true. You really want things to slow down. You want buyers to be able to have some options, maybe have a chance to look at a home and spend a few days thinking about it. There's a lot of positives in the buyer market in terms of the rates are still not, these are not horrendous rates. These are great mortgage rates. And you have a chance to negotiate now. Home inspections are back. You don't have 10 minutes to make up your mind. You're not in huge bidding wars. And we're starting to see housing values be more what their actual market value is. And that's what we're seeing decelerate. So that whole difference
Insanity.
The whole difference between 3% in price appreciation and 18% has nothing to do with the housing. It has everything to do with the population of people purchasing.
Yep.
And so what you're seeing is not the market returning to sanity, you're seeing buyers returning to sanity. And so let's let this keep going. Let's not talk about this like it's the death of the world, because it's really not, and start to have a smooth system, because what you were headed towards was a housing logjam where nobody got anything done and nothing happened. We want a smooth flow of sales and purchases that have room for negotiating and really create better standards for the kind of home you purchase.
Well said. Elberson's a perfect example. Contingencies, you negotiated.
Yeah, I think Quinton's 100% right. I think for any industry, you would like predictable growth. When growth was what it was the last 2 years, it's really difficult to predict where it's at. And so, yeah, I think Alex and I had
That's his wife.
10 hours to make an offer on the house. And that's just too quick for first-time home buyers to feel confident in their decision. And that's what Quinton is talking about. As an agent, your goal is to help them feel confident in that purchase. And where the market was last year and the year before, there's no way to have that. Buying a house, putting in an offer sometimes sight unseen with no inspection, a first-time home buyer should not be subjected to that, right?
Yeah.
Would you buy a used car that way?
Would you buy anything that way?
Well, although it's interesting, I was changed the car market. I mean, you probably bought your most recent car, sight unseen. You just ordered it and showed up.
I did not.
Oh, you got to test drive it? Okay.
I did not.
You test drove it for a little
In
bit,
fact,
right?
I have bought only one car in the last 5 years, sight unseen, and that was slowly with lots of internet.
Yeah.
So you would not recommend doing that?
Oh, no. I think it's terrible.
Yeah. And that's what people were doing in this market. Comments coming in for the panel. Neil Williamson's the president of the Free Enterprise Forum. This is a great one for QB. Will back-to-school consumption be impacted by the R word talk?
Not as much as by the I word.
Yeah, well said. 100%. Where's the sound box on that? Give them the round of applause. That's true.
So I want you to think back to our miniature, very local gasoline crisis. When there really wasn't a gasoline crisis, but we manufactured one because we went into this, oh my gosh, I have to buy it today at $4.15 a gallon before it's $5.15 a gallon next week, and we created our own issue. So I think back to school, if you think about it, there's still money in savings accounts like we talked about. Children are really important to us, and so we value their education, and I am using us colloquially. And the opportunity to use a tax holiday to stock up can be really good if we're being realistic about it. The amount of stuff I have in my house that I don't have to buy for another year because I went to Costco and just filled up my car 18 months ago, and I'm a single person. I don't know why I did it. It was completely insane. let's not do that again, because one, be really judicious when you're out shopping about what do you really need for back to school. What if this savings that you're pulling from to do this is what you have for the next 12 months? And at some point you have to balance out where those priorities are. Two, remember, every time we overstock, we make the supply chain mess worse. And so what one individual does is not the big deal, but much like this report was talking about gender gaps and how we really feel inflation and where do we feel it first, it's usually felt in retail, and it's usually whoever the caretaker is for the family budget, the household, and the back-to-school folks. So take advantage of it, but remember that every time you buy something extra that you don't need, that's still money that's gone. I have an aunt that had 40 cans of cat food because they were on sale, 10 for $1. She didn't own a cat. So just every time you look, if you're watching this, I want you to think, is this worth it for the cat?
She just stored it?
You know what? Don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to, Jerry.
Was that the Wednesday surprise meet?
I don't know, but we never ate a casserole again.
Lee Elberson, we got some more comments coming in. Carol,
real quick, just to follow up on that, I don't think. So Neil's question was, will this affect back to school, like consumer spending?
You know, like the backpacks, the notebooks, the pencils. I think that's what he's referring to. Is that what you think? The clothing, the shoes?
Yeah, I think that will be probably one of the least affected, because Gallup did a poll on what consumers consider cutting back as discretionary expenses when a recession comes, and education supplies did not make that list.
Right. And
think about how much.
Obvious ones,
if I told you, Jared, would you rather eat or would you rather give your kid what he needs to be successful?
100%.
You would starve, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, my wife would, and my wife would take it to a different level for our son. I mean, she'd be out there like in the median, hustling if it got to that point.
Which is why I'm more concerned about us overdoing it. I don't picture people cutting back on school spending. I can picture people feeling all the anxiety that they built up over the last 3 months and overdoing it.
No, but to Lee's point and to your point, I think what people are going to cut back on, unfortunately, is the happy hours and the eating out and the support of the restaurants, you know, on Main Street. And that's not just in Charlottesville, but any local community. And that stinks because F&B got hammered during COVID. And that's very unfortunate because we love F&B here. Let's go to Carol. Carol's the queen of Jack Jewett. She watches the program and often offers valuable perspective. A barometer may be if we see a significant upswing in spending during the back-to-school tax holiday, one way or the other. We could see people shopping a lot to save money or lower than usual sales if people are dead broke. That's a follow-up to what we're talking about here. Grayson has said this. Lee made the point that restaurants were pretty empty on Friday night. We went out on both Friday and Saturday night, and it was a ghost town around the downtown mall.
Yep.
And that's a follow-up to Lee's point. So how does it gonna, let's talk housing. How's housing, the supply or the interest going to shift again come Q3 when school starts?
I want to say one more thing before we shift.
Okay.
If you're following this sort of thing, big producers like Kraft Heinz, Procter & Gamble, they're already seeing brand shift. So we're already feeling some of this. We're already behaving
to lower price brands.
Brand shift means going to generic.
Going to generic or going to a
lower price brand.
You've had a favorite brand for forever.
Yeah.
And they hand out scanners, and I think there's even supermarkets you can scan and pay for your grocery cart as you go. They gather all that data, and they know who is who because of credit card receipts, and so they can map the brand shift, and they're already seeing some of that. And their growth was much lower than what was expected. So I think we're already seeing that. As to how this affects home buying, if you are looking at your overall budget and you're concerned about making bills, your opportunity to go out on a weekend, your desire to go out on a weekend to an open house and decide to buy a home, probably not there. You know, it's sort of a balance. We had a panic in the pandemic of, I have to get a house right now before they're all gone. I have to move right now because my standard of living, it's all back to standard of living, changed dramatically in COVID and I want it back. And since I can't have it on the downtown mall anymore, I'm going to move out of the city and I'm going to buy this other thing. So a variety of those points of views. The next consumer behavior is the one we're trying to predict. And I think while people are focused on things like gasoline and food budget and kids back to school, the normal slowdown that we see because of all those things in a good economy is going to be a little more exacerbated. People are still going to buy and sell houses. People have really good reasons to move that are compelling, but the breadth of those compelling reasons is narrower than it was a year ago.
Well said. Lee, I want you to jump in here. Nikki Chambliss from Keller Williams Alliance often sits in QB's chair. I love that you're having this conversation about recession, and it's incredible the amount of influence we, the people, that we constantly seem to be unaware of either the influence or how to wield that influence. She basically talks about it's us, the consumer, that is going to determine what we might do and how we may get out of this. Travis Hackworth is watching in Danville, Virginia. He says this for the panel: housing might slow, but overall demand is going to be here long term. When you're underproduced housing by 50% and you have 5 million more potential buyers in the market, it's hard for the need to dissipate long term. Travis Hackworth, well said. I mean, we're under inventoried. Historically, a 5% interest rate, 5.5%, it's in that vicinity, is so freaking cheap. And we have a boatload of millennials and Gen Zers about to get in the market as well. I mean, this is not going to slow down.
I'm going to ask the question to Quinton. Is there some danger that as consumers feel inflation and fear a recession, and the interest, even if the interest rates go down, that the buying demographic, as it's going to change back to first-time home buyers, now you have less first-time home buyers because their savings are depleted and they fear a recession, and you're losing the people that are looking at it purely as an investment property? Is that a concern from a global housing market stance?
I think it's always a concern. You know, a lot of both positive and negative economic factors are self-reinforcing loops. So I think knowing about the expensive watermelon that Jerry's wife is complaining about at the store is important, because it's a really good predictor of what's to come. Mm-hmm. And until that anxiety goes down, the other ones don't. And much like putting gas in your tank, there is a large portion of housing that is very simply necessary, that families and households are going to keep up and keep looking for until they absolutely cannot do it.
I think it could put strain on not the entry, but, and I'm curious of your take on this. I think we'll have much more interest into that 3 to 5 price point, that entry price point, or that step up price point, because the rates are rising, making that monthly payment a little higher. And that entry price point and that move up price point is already pretty strained with the boomers and the first time home buyers going after it. Now, what could counter that point is the listings in Lake Monticello. I mean, during COVID, that was the hottest neighborhood for first-time home buyers because of the price point, and it's gone from single-digit number inventory-wise to 20 plus. And you have some, including one at 199 that's been on the market for close to 3 weeks. So we're certainly seeing the market change.
And I think real estate as in total, so we don't have any more houses on the market or in inventory than we did. Forgive me. We don't have any more houses in inventory than we did 3 months ago in terms of being created.
They're just priced differently.
But our weeks of inventory has gone up by over 50% over the last 3 months. And so there is this relationship between demand and current available housing that is increasing inventory, but that's not really going to raise the number of buyers that can get into the market. If we can build more, as you have increased housing inventory, you do have a higher demand. That just doesn't necessarily mean it's the panicked demand. Your volume goes up when you have more available because more people have access to housing and more people settle in.
Well said. Elberson, thoughts and comments coming in fast and furious here.
Well, this is Quinton's bailiwick, so he knows it better than anyone. Again, will just reiterate, I think this long-term will be a good thing for first-time home buyers. I think the other factor that we saw is that the rental rates this year were going up dramatically. I know if we were going to stay in our place, they were going to go up 10%.
And I have some data
that is wild.
Which I still think is beneath the average for
10% is below market increase.
Yeah.
It's
Really?
100. Oh my gosh. And Suzanne Reel of Allied Property Management. Allied Property Management is who we utilize with some of our properties. She's phenomenal. Allied Property Management.
I love to hear that. Yes, it's nice that there's good property management companies in Charlottesville, because I've
she's
definitely
phenomenal.
had a very bad experience with ours. Won't name them.
So this data was in Quinton. This is up your alley. This was in the NBC 29 yesterday. So on the news yesterday, since 2020, housing costs have shown a 20.2% increase. The August rent report by our Apartment List shows that the cost of housing has really gone up. Now they're jumping 9%, where in the past 12 months to 24 months, they went up as much as 25 to 30% in the Charlottesville metro area. That's astronomical.
25%.
But if you think of how, if you realize that all housing cannot, this is a hard Monday for me. Wow, I want some empathy here.
You work too much this weekend. That
This
is
is
your
a
problem.
hard Monday. When you realize that all housing costs are connected, when you see housing values skyrocketing, you should not be surprised that as leases come due for renewal, you see rental costs going up. Now, Kevin makes a good point. Yes, the economy is changing, and definitely inflation is something we're looking at, and we're probably in a recession, whether we call it one yet or not. These are all things that are looking at returning us to normal, and if we individual consumers collectively sort of take a deep breath and really manage budgets and work forward, this will be one of the stepping stones on the way to improving stuff. If you're going to have a tumor removed, you got to get cut open first. So this is part of that process, and I still just really want local municipality to understand what a huge difference zoning makes. $93,000 of your housing costs across the nation on average are because of zoning regulations and government needs. Some of that's probably necessary and safeguards you, but maybe not $93,000 worth. There's ways to make the recovery back to something more sane faster, but we're going to have to go through this rough patch, and it's really what needed to happen, because we would have kept blocking out people from housing and making that bar higher and higher and higher till not even rentals were an option for people. So this does need to happen, and I hope we keep an eye on all the things that can make that return to actually building houses at a fair pace happen more smoothly and faster, while remembering that there's a portion of our country that really does need help. They need help for affordable housing and housing affordability in order to stay safe and contribute and have good home lives.
You can, Lee, you have thoughts on that? I mean, we can make a legitimate argument that the housing ecosystem is more expensive than it's ever been for a family looking to buy, and certainly for a family looking to rent. A 3-bedroom, 2-bath in the urban ring, Wegmans area, you're at $2,000 a month to rent, $2,000 a month. Not a standalone home. Talking a condo, entry price point, that school system, which is good, Mountain View, $2,000 a month. Entry price point, urban ring, good luck finding something that doesn't need some TLC without a 4 in front of it. Rising rates make the payments even more expensive. Affordability, maybe the most challenging it's ever been right now.
Yeah, we had a long conversation while I was on vacation in California with some friends, and I think it's rare you find a situation like my wife and I, where you have dual income, no kids, and
quality incomes.
Quality incomes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so I think it's much more difficult when you're at like single income and 2 or 3 kids. And so I think those are the concerns that you have, because having that high of a mortgage or a rental lease, it isn't that much of a big deal until you consider what the median salary is. I think that's the big deal, is what percentage of their
$111,000, the median salary for a Charlottesville metro household income. $111,000 right now. That's not cheap. That's not low.
Yeah, I don't think we're in the worst affordability. I think we're in the worst inventory.
Okay. Do those go hand in hand?
They affect one another, but they do not necessarily have a linear relationship. If you look at housing affordability over the last, let's say, 120 years, it improved all the way up into the 80s. When you saw income inequality begin to really separate was when housing affordability started to go down. If you go back in time, 40 years, a bank clerk made more money based on inflation and cost of living 30 years ago than they do today. Mm-hmm. And so although we're seeing wage growth still go pretty well,
it hasn't kept pace with current times. He made the point, and I'll throw it back to you. You made the point, and this was a really good point. 30 years ago, one income household could support a family with 2 kids.
We were just talking about this.
Yeah. No way you could do that now.
So
It's difficult you could do that now.
we didn't suddenly get here today solely based on what happened in the last 36 months. You've got at least 15 to 20 years of underbuilding housing. You've got what I would call 40 years of inflationary real wage stagnation and income inequality. And then you've had a big shift in how we have GDP. We are no longer the manufacturing capital of the world. We're a very service-based economy, which is very sensitive to changes in global economics
100%.
and things like pandemics. So there's a lot of stuff we can talk about that really is about the last 36 months, but it's not even 50% of why we're talking about the level of difficulty today.
Well said. Not enough inventory. The small builder was pushed out of the market or evaporated in 2009, 2008, 2010. You don't have enough labor to create the rooftops that we need. We have some supply chain issues. We have inflation. There's so many factors here. Keith Smith makes the point that the $199,000 listing in Lake Monticello went under contract this weekend. That's great to hear. Congratulations to whoever purchased that. Lee Elberson, we'll go to you, and then we'll get some comments that are coming in fast and furious here.
Yeah, I think the other element to this is sort of thinking about what they call the Great Resignation, which was, during the pandemic, people reevaluating what their needs were. And I think Quinton hit on it, that we had a multiple decade-long abuse of minimum wage and utilizing minimum wage workers while driving corporate profits. And I wonder how the big corporation layoffs, like Tesla, I heard Lego's making big layoffs. They're laying off in advance of what they think is a recession, 10% of their
Google
workforce.
has stopped hiring.
Yeah.
Microsoft. I mean,
Yeah.
huge brands here.
Yeah, that will probably make it so that we will see more people return to the workforce.
I said this last week. I 100% believe
Yeah.
this. This work from home thing is about to go away. Maybe not go away, but people are going to feel a lot more pressure to come into work again.
Yeah. And I think this is a good thing. As Quinton said, all of this had to change. We were in an area of unsustainable growth in a variety of different sectors in our economy, and this is what needs to happen. We're ripping the Band-Aid off. I don't like the idea of opening up the tumor. I don't like that sort of blood stuff. So we're ripping off the Band-Aid, and then I think we will.
Marine.
Start to see growth. Being a United States Marine doesn't mean that you like to have to see blood.
I would like to stick to my
Keith,
stereotypes.
back me up on
please.
this, okay? So anyway, I think that these are all things that had to happen for us to get through this and stabilize, and that's what we want. We want stabilization in this country.
Alex, your wife is watching. We had a viewer trying to walk into the studio to offer perspective on the show right there. Thank you, Judah, for running interference. Alex, welcome to the program. Minimum wage. Kevin Yancey says this in Waynesboro. If minimum wage kept pace with prices, minimum wage would be close to $20 an hour. I think it would probably be higher than that if it kept up to speed with everything. The problem is if minimum wage gets to $20, $25, $30 an hour, the small business owner cannot afford that. The small business owner is going to go away. If it
did it overnight, you don't want anything to be a rapid change. This goes back to what Quinton and I were saying. You want very slow, steady, predictable growth. If you change it overnight, yeah, you're going to disrupt the system, and a lot of the systems are going to crash.
That's what we saw during COVID.
Yeah.
We also talk, I think a key point about that is not that we don't want growth, but we talk about growth as though it happens universally across the economy all at once. Like everybody takes the same step up the stairs together, and that's not what happens. Different industries move up, different demographics move up, and you want it to be slow so that it works its way through the system and everybody takes that step together before somebody is 6 steps ahead. So there's economic inequalities that go along with the income inequality, and it's those sorts of gaps that create these sorts of issues we're talking about.
Keith wants to participate. We love it, Keith. Keith's on some R&R right now.
They've got internet in the county jail? That's amazing.
Keith is not in the slammer. Keith is not in the slammer.
You just want to reiterate that.
He's not in the slammer. There's a lot of people watching. He says, for your information, sold in the last 30 days at Lake Monticello, 22 homes closed, median numbers, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,981 square feet, days on market 11, median sales price 325,000, price per square foot. QB's not a huge fan of that metric.
I hate that metric.
I know you do. $168 per square foot at the lake right there. That metric is a very difficult one to digest, and it takes some nuance and sophistication to appreciate that metric. So he's saying stuff is still moving at the lake, which is what you've been saying, QB, throughout this entire show. It's just becoming in a more sane fashion here.
We're not going to stop buying and selling houses because people need to move. And people that have been sitting on the sidelines that are fine now have a market they can enter into and actually have a say in what house they live in, as opposed to having to take the one that didn't get snatched up by everybody else. So this is going to keep going. It needs to slow down for a while. We need to return to a more sane, normal pace. And for a while, how that plays out in the economy, there's going to be places that globally that kind of sucks. People watching, you as individuals, it doesn't have to suck for you specifically, although we're all feeling the effects of inflation.
I mean, the increase in rates here by Powell and the Fed is directly impacting those with credit card balances and credit card debt. I mean, the interest rates are going up. We know the pinch is happening across the board. Jehu Martin, welcome to the program. So this is for Lee Elberson. How has these economic times impacted Clayborne and your business? Jennifer wants to know that question.
Yeah, good question. So I think I'm also worried about how a recession will affect the tutoring business. So Clayborne is somewhat different than I would say other tutoring companies. We specialize in college preparation, and we have a pretty substantial return on investment for college admissions. It's a pretty straightforward argument to parents. They say, gosh, why should we spend several $1,000s? We say, because on average, Clayborne students will get over $10,000 more in scholarships.
Dang.
So you will see that back, right? So it's a return on investment. Now, that's different than academic tutoring support saying, hey, I want my child to do better. He's really not understanding calculus or really struggling in Spanish. I think those sort of tutoring services, I think we will see decrease. But college admissions and graduate school admissions, getting into business school, getting into law school, you're gonna make more money, and this will help you achieve a better school, which will result in better recruiting practices. So I think this will be somewhat shielded from a potential recession, but we're putting in place measures to prevent that. We are offering a very low entry-level price now. You can get into Clayborne for under $100 an hour now. And so we're just trying to be adaptable to the market. And I think, based on what we learned the last time there was a fear of a recession, I think we've learned from that. And I feel more confident in Clayborne's future than I ever have.
Wow,
surprisingly.
bullish.
I know, very surprising. It's for me too, right?
Bullish, Lee Elberson.
Can you believe that? I know.
I got goosebumps from that.
I know.
I like it.
Yeah.
The follow-up question from her to you, will folks consider 4-year and graduate school degrees at a lesser clip because of the cost and penny pinching? That's a great question.
That is a great question. I think that has already started. The cost-benefit analysis of college is way too expensive. UVA is no different. It's a money-making business. They make money by charging students. And most students do not end up with a full ride scholarship. We know that. Only about 3% of all college tuition is dedicated towards scholarship. 3%, which means 97% of it gets paid by somebody. Most of that is in student loans. And so my wife and I talked about this yesterday. If I told you, hey, you can get a $100,000 a year job, Quinton, in 4 years, but you have to take out $100,000 in debt. Knowing what you know about debt and interest, would you take that deal? Or would you go get a job right now for
Electrician, plumber.
Where were you when my kids were younger? That's all I'm thinking.
So that isn't. Yeah. So that's
your daughter's a winemaker. You did great by her. She's a winemaker.
We're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's something. Again, we have consistent conversations with parents because the
would parents do that? $100,000 in debt for their kid 4 years from now to get a $100,000 job. That's a tough sell for me.
It's a hard conversation to have. Sorry, Quinton, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's a hard conversation to have, but it's one that somebody needs to bring it up. So I am all about going for your dreams. Hey, I want to be an artist. Hey, I want to do this. That is fine. I never want to step in the way of somebody's dreams. Somebody needs to have the practical discussion. On average, the job you are seeking is going to pay you $73,000 a year, and this school you're going to rack up over $100,000 in debt. You'll be paying this off. This is a mortgage. You're going to be paying this off for 30 years. I don't want to be the bad guy, but somebody has to say it, and that's the conversation that we have. Again, we are just trying to buttress this and saying, okay, we can get you $20,000 or $30,000 in scholarships, but there's still another $100,000 on top of that, and so. That's the conversation that needs to happen.
And I really wish some of the $100,000 degrees would result in a job that was at least $73,000 a year. But the truth is, a lot of those jobs are 35 and 40.
Art history. Thank you.
You know, you're spending not just your cost of living, but you're spending 6 years worth of income.
Opportunity cost.
Just to get this degree. It's insane.
That's how I look at it
it's insane.
That's exactly how I look at
it. I mean,
if my kid came to me and said, Jerry, I don't want to go to college, I'd be like, okay, let's figure it out.
In my parents' day.
But if he said, I want to go to college, Dad, I know. In my heart, I'm going to be an artist, Dad. This is what I know.
No, I would say no. If he said, I want to go to college. Easier
said now than done. After,
No, wait, dude. Do you know me?
I do know you.
Okay.
You are an extreme capitalist.
Later on, we'll talk about how much authority you actually have over your children.
What did your kids pursue?
Because I know it feels like that's not relevant.
Okay.
But are they physicists too?
No.
No, they learned.
No, and I made no money off of that either. But
me either.
Yeah, your kids are going to do what they're going to do.
I would say Quinton, stay in state.
The issue
stay in state for college.
The issue is not what our children are choosing to do. It's the amount of expense it's taking them to get there.
Yeah.
In my parents' day, which I'm pretty old, so it's a while ago, but it wasn't that long ago.
You act young.
You could go to UC Berkeley for free. Tuition cost $0. And so if you think of how young I obviously am, in the not too distant past, we've had this huge ramp up in tuition costs. And so I think if you're talking about this particular loop, the first thing we have to talk about is how much it costs to get a degree versus what you do with it, because we're now being forced in this sort of educational inflation market to make decisions about what degrees we have based on how much money we think they're going to earn by the time we get out of them, and you no longer get to do what you want.
All right,
people are zinging you here on that 73,000 comment.
Okay.
People are zinging you on the 73,000 comment here. Quinton highlighted this. He's saying, good luck finding the jobs where you come out with a 4-year degree with the 73,000 salary. And then the folks are saying, where are those jobs locally? And then one guy is saying, find me a job in facilities management at UVA.
Oh, I never said it was locally. No, I never said it was locally. Okay, quick question.
You said that was a national number, guys.
Yeah, that was a national number.
Okay.
Quick question for Quinton. If you had another child and they said right now, let's say
that would be a miracle, but let's keep going.
And they wanted to go to UC Berkeley out of state, how much would they pay for their 4-year education?
$250,000 more?
I think if we're just talking tuition, I want to say it's $45,000 to $60,000 a year right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is that? $250,000?
Almost $250,000. Yeah.
And that's not even including fun. That's not fun or living or food.
Now, if you're in state, as you said, Jerry,
if you're out there and you're college age, you don't get to have fun. That's off the menu now. Just give
Your
it up.
offspring want to have fun, knowing their father. You have fun. They want to have fun.
He works hard.
We're going to talk again in about 10 years. We're going to see how this conversation goes.
Yeah. I would say to my kids, stay in state. That's
the in-state
now. Consider the Piedmont route.
Oh, that's my conversation to anybody who's worried about that. Go to PVCC for 2 years and then transfer into William and Mary.
You get a 3 or better, you get any school.
Because when people say, where did you go? There's no asterisk next to your degree. It's like, I got a degree from UVA.
Bingo.
Nobody says, oh, you went to PVCC for 2 years. It's like, I got a degree from UVA.
Exactly right.
All that matters.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's cost affordable.
100%.
because you're saving on the first 2 years. Neil Williamson, the 2022 tuition and fees of University of California, Berkeley, UC Berkeley, are $14,226 for California residents and $43,980 for out-of-state students.
I was close.
Its tuition and fees is much higher than the average amount of similar schools, $30,786 public based on out-of-state tuition. So that's Neil Williamson giving us some data here. Why?
Real quick, also, another piece of data. Average salary of a UVA graduate, this is posted by University of Virginia, $77,000. So that's kind of, now again, I'm not saying that they're staying.
It's local.
I'm not saying that they're staying here. Yes, it's very difficult to, because if you have 10,000 graduates, there's not 10,000 jobs available here. You're going to have to go somewhere else. But it does depend on where you go and what your degree is in. And that's the conversation that parents and educational professionals like myself like to have with parents.
Quinton?
I just think, we want a little bit of inequality in how the world works. We want people to work for things. And I think when it comes down to the dining room table of most families, having to work hard to get ahead is really kind of okay, provided there's that upward mobility and there's that opportunity to do so. And as we've gone through the past 25 years, whether you're talking tuition or housing costs or job wages, we're seeing that upward mobility be kind of stunted and making it harder for us to have children and expect something better for them. The odds are becoming more lottery-like in their ability to do better than we did and have more than we did and have a better life. And I think as we go through all of the angst that we're feeling around politics and economics, it's really that same back-to-school spending discussion. And what do we value? What do we want for the generation after us? What do we want for our kids? And so I think there's a lot of stuff we can talk about. And I don't know how we can fix all of it at once. But if you go back in time, jobs are changing and education's an important part of that. And access to being able to reclass yourself when the job you did for 10 years goes out of style and is no longer there. We've got a lot of opportunity because we have such great institutes of learning in the country. We have a lot of opportunity while we're still one of the richest countries in the world. And we're facing some interesting things over the next couple of years that had to happen. And so I think it's not really bemoaning how we got here unless we're using that as a tool to chart a path forward.
I was having, you guys are crushing this. And we'll head to the finish line here. I was having this conversation with a friend last week, guy, Dave Ramsey, an institutional financial advisor. And he's got a show, a brand. We all know Dave Ramsey. And he was zinging millennials like on a recent show. And like one of the millennials, clapped back at Ramsey and he said, dude, it's not about us buying $5 lattes. It's about student loan debt exponentially higher than it's ever been and wage increases not matching inflationary times. We're not doing this by pissing away lattes. We're doing this because we have a lot of headwinds going against us as we enter the job market. And when this millennial clapped back at Ramsey, I'm like, that's what's happening. The wages aren't keeping up with cost of living, and the student loan debt is unfairly burdensome. And I'm not politicizing this. I'm not saying we should eradicate student loan debt. That's not what I'm saying here. But it's unfairly burdening an entire generation of people entering the workforce.
It's predatory.
It's predatory.
I easily took out enough loans in graduate school that could have been used to pay for a house, and I had to sign 2 documents.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Nobody, they don't sit down with you and explain to you, like, maybe you're an adult, maybe you should know this, but it is definitely predatory. And I think if you're going to give somebody a loan of that magnitude, somebody needs to sit down and say, where is your job field? Tell me, prove to me how you're going to pay this back.
Can I ask how much the loan was?
Would you loan me $300,000?
That's how much it was? You got
No. Okay. My student loans were over $100,000 to get through graduate school.
I would not loan you. We even do poker cash up front.
A 22-year-old Lee got a $100,000 loan by signing 2 pieces of paper?
Yep. And you just click a button. When you want more money, you just click more, top me off. That you need to be able to prove that you're going to pay this back. Otherwise, this is why we're in this situation. This is why we're going to have to forgive loans. you're locking students into indentured servitude. They will never. Somebody who takes out $200,000 in loans will never be, on average, will never be able to pay that back.
Depending on their
education
field.
or tuition foreclosure is what you're saying?
Oof. But what are you foreclosing upon? Are you going to just take the paper off
They've
the
already.
wall?
I'm just saying,
They don't
like-
have a job, right? Like, yeah.
What? Yeah, that is crazy. That's another. I don't want to use the B word, but is that another bubble waiting to happen?
Or you put them into jobs that the government deems as necessary to keep us in sort of the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency, like whatever it is that the Federal Reserve decides is like, this is necessary. We will forgive you under these constraints. That would be a plan.
That's another show right there.
That's a whole nother show.
That's a whole
right
nother
there,
talk
yeah.
show. And another topic that's coming on here that's another talk show is how is the voucher system going to impact the public schools? And I know Elberson's got a huge take on this, but that's another talk show.
We talked about it last year,
I know you
remember?
did.
Yeah.
I know you did, and that's coming to fruition right now. The stat was just put on the feed. The average plumber salary in Virginia is basically $60,000 as of June 28th. But the range typically falls between 51 and 68 per the U.S. Census. That's from Keith. Do we want to do any closing thoughts here with the panel? You guys.
Oh, he's got a thought.
I have a thought. Also, Quinton said we should end the show with some fun stuff.
Oh,
so
please
in
do.
thinking about consumers restructuring their spending, there's the last recession we had, or after 2008. One of the industries that actually grew was Hasbro. Because people are thinking, hey, instead of going out and doing this, we're going to let's play Scrabble or let's play poker, let's stay in and do something.
Board game company.
There's a board game, but there's a puzzle hunt on Saturday, August 27th, 1 to 5 p.m. Starts at Ix Park.
Oh.
You know what? I sent Judah the email, Judah, if you want to put it in the feed, how to register.
Okay.
But that's a way to learn about the community in sort of a fun way, and I think it's $20 or something. Also, Charlottesville's Unlocked History Escape Room, another way to learn about our history in a way that's very affordable. So that's what I thought I would end on, because those are two ways that families and individuals can get together and have fun, relatively inexpensive way.
I like it.
Is that okay?
That was
I
great.
think that's a great ending.
Right. Yeah.
Or they can come to our poker game if we ever have it again.
You know, I as hard as things are right now, I don't believe that this is our world for the next 2 years. So buckle up and just really pay attention to your spending and take a deep breath. This is part of the path to a more sane real estate market and economy.
Well said. Quinton Beckham, guys. Lee Elberson, your wife says, compared to all the paperwork and information we had to supply for the mortgage on our home, 2 signatures for the student loan debt is an absolute joke. Well said,
Smart
Alex.
woman.
She is a smart woman.
And I've enjoyed Kevin and Travis. I've been trying to respond to them hit and miss here and there.
Okay, I like it. You guys, this was fun. I love when you guys come on the show. These two are sensational. Just fantastically well-read individuals that have good perspective to offer. Judah is the compass, the infrastructure compass. He's the director, the jack of all wit, Judah Wickower. I'm Jerry Miller. The I Love CVille show is up in 1 hour and 10 minutes, and this entire show, for those that are asking, will be archived on realtalkwithkeithsmith.com, a fantastic new website. Thank you kindly for joining us, and props to Keller Williams Alliance for offering the time and the perspective for today's program. You guys have a good one. Take care.
Thanks.
Well done, gentlemen. We'll give us a hot mic.